Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from October 30th to November 5th. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. cannabis industry, identify top U.S. MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth a lot more in the future than they are now based on their current market cap, and take advantage whenever you feel ready, if you wish to do so, of course, pending whatever incremental reform we're supposed to get from now until, let's say, next year's election. That being said, I've seen it happen in the past. Once the flip does switch, a lot of wealth is going to be created, so you might as well learn how to take advantage for yourself, your family, and your community so you can make some money and try to give back that way. But as always, this is not advice, just perspective from someone that has skin in the game. That being said, we're going to start with this one from Green Market Report. As U.S. Senate approves medical cannabis for military veterans. Unexpected, but we love to hear this. And so apparently the measure still needs to go through a reconciliation process with the House version before heading to the president's desk. And so if you've watched my channel for a few years, this sounds just like the process of trying to get SAFE into the NDAA, the finalized version, where the Senate version and the House is different, so they have to reconcile the differences. And so while this is very positive, this headline, the reality is because of the two parallel bills have different provisions, they'll still have to be reconciled by a conference committee prior to getting to Biden's desk for signature. And so let's hope that it makes it through into the final version so that this does become law so that U.S. veterans finally get access to cannabis that they've needed for a very long time. But, of course, you got to read a little deeper for the details, so just wanted to share all that. Nonetheless, huge win, full link, but you can basically pause to read all that there. Well, we got this unexpected news from Green Market Report as well. As of October 31st, DEA proposes increasing amount of cannabis, psychedelics authorized for research. They seem to be able to move a drug from any schedule that they want as quickly as they want if they want to do that. Why don't they seem to want to move quickly? I don't know, but this does tell me this could be some sort of foreshadowing, because why would they be doing this if they didn't intend to reschedule cannabis possibly and, setting the stage for more research in a sense. So comments on the proposal can be submitted to the DEA until November 30th. But that being said, the proposed production quota increases in grams for all of these substances down here. And that is the rest of the story. So, of course, you can pause to read. Otherwise, full link is in the comments, but figured I would share that. While we got this clip from a Dale's Report chat with Dan Ahrens, the portfolio manager for MSOs, and Jungle Java shared, I'm attaching this clip because many will likely not watch the video to see what investing Dan said, but might be imminent. No promises, of course, are important to note here. And it's like, yeah, well, he could have just said nothing and we'd still be speculating. So not that it really helps, but just to highlight what MSOs says here. 23-minute mark, we hear that the announcement of the DEA recommendation is imminent, as in by the end of this month. We'd love that to be the case. Is it true? We don't know. Make sure you plan accordingly for your own situation, because that's all we can really do until the puzzle pieces fall into place for something to finally happen. But let's roll the clip.
Things. Okay. But again, we've been burned for 2.5 years now, haven't we? Hearing things were coming, hearing promises, hearing lots of things from our wonderful House representatives and especially the senators. So I am hearing, hey, have you guys heard anything to the negative that the DEA is not going to approve the HHS recommendation? I would say no. I don't think anybody's heard a word.
If any,
only on Cannabis Twitter, if anything.
This morning, they're upping the quota of their requested psilocybin and cannabis stocks for research potential.
Right.
So, if anything, that's a flashing green light.
I agree.
So I have little birds talking in my ear all the time, and we don't put much weight in them. We like to hear things, but we never know if they're true. I hear that the DEA acceptance of the recommendation might be imminent, like this month. No promises, of course. That's just stuff we hear. Some stuff we hear comes true, some stuff doesn't. But we really do think it's imminent. I can't say in what time frame, but it might be sooner rather than later. Now that opens up a whole other can of worms. Is there, how much of a comment period is it going to be? We all hear that we've all called it the Garland memo now. We don't know if it's actually going to call it the Garland memo. We hear that is already prepared. It's already been all worked behind the scenes. But we don't know if that Garland memo is going to come out when the DEA accepts that recommendation, or they might keep it in the drawer until after a comment period and so on.
Seems very in line with what Jason Wild said a while back, based on his past experience in pharmacy or in pharmaceutical industry and his source.
But we hear the Garland memo is out there. It's going to help define Schedule 3 drugs are typically prescription drugs. They're not, go to dispensary drugs. So they got to cover that. They got to cover adult use and states' rights, which they can do. Now, both of those things still aren't legalization, of course, so we don't know what that does to safe harbor for banks and for listing exchanges, which we all think is coming in some form or fashion. We just can't say when. I'm going to say I think this DEA recommendation might be coming a whole lot sooner rather than later. I think that could be a big boost, even though it's still not it's not the end of the line.
Well, thank you for sharing what you think, Dan. And of course, we do hope you're right. And this full interview is going to be linked at the end, so you can find that in the comments. Just figured I would share a few of the comments, and we're going to touch on this in a moment, but just basically people responding with what they think. And then on top of that, wanted to share this tweet quickly before we get into this very interesting article I found. But from Nico Enia, October 31st, 2023. I'll admit, I don't know who this guy is, so take it with a grain of salt. Just sharing what he's reiterating based on what Dan said. Just an observation from him. I have every lobbyist I know and trust telling me that Schedule 3 safer and care done deal in February 2024, yet ex-pot peeps losing their shit like nothing is ever going to happen. Two groups couldn't be on more opposite sides. Now, I don't know if what he's saying is true because I don't really know many lobbyists other than like Brady Cobb, who's a former lobbyist, and Don Murphy, who I follow on here, who most of you guys likely follow. But this is what I really wanted to get to as I found this morning. Cannabis and Schedule 3 Next Steps for the DEA, written as of October 2nd by Ryan Mao. Thank you, Ryan Mao, for writing this. Now, if you're a longtime viewer of my channel, you're likely well aware of how we got to where we are now based on where we've been and all the crap we've gone through. But if you're not, this is a good sort of summary of where we think we could be, because honestly, most of it is speculating because we're not getting any clear fucking deadlines from the government. And anytime we do hear a deadline, apparently it's arbitrary. It doesn't actually matter because, of course, the Dems don't hold anyone accountable. That being said, long story short, wanted to share this guy's prediction with you just because it's almost as good as anything else we have. And I do invite you to share what you think about it in the comments, please, because, of course, the more of a discussion we can get in there, hopefully we can paint a clear picture. But that being said, cannabis is a winning political issue. No shit. It is in my view that the timing of the rescheduling process will be driven by election strategy, most likely. And while we were hopeful that there was a 90-day rule from August 30th when the DEA announced, when HHS announced that they recommend that the DEA reschedule cannabis, we've also heard that that is not actually, there's no real timeline. And so while it says that there was a 90-day thing for the DEA to respond, that might not be true. And if that's not true, then this is probably more likely going to be the case. That being said, it's still all speculation, just thinking out loud. But with primaries in February, debates in September, and Election Day on November 5th, 2024, the optimal window for the DEA to announce a decision would be between February and April 2024 in the form of a proposed rule, followed by a final rule announcement in late October 2024, as long as they don't give a fuck about American people and they're only using this cannabis rescheduling and all this announcement as a political tool. Clearly, that's what they might and probably will do. Surprise, surprise. If we were to look at where the DEA is in the rulemaking process, Table 1, and historical timelines from past examples, Table 2, rescheduling could occur as early as May 2024. We hope for that to be the case, and of course this one said February 2024, so again, we don't know. We're just trying our best to figure it out based on all the information we've been given. And so just wanted to share this if you wanted to pause to take a look at it and how long this stuff can actually take. I just found this article very interesting and just a very good refresher and summary for anyone that hasn't been watching this channel for a long time. But we know the ball is fully in the president's court. It's up to them to prove that either they can keep their word and their campaign promises to end prohibition, reschedule, and right a lot of the past wrongs, especially from Biden, the guy who literally wrote the crime bill and supported segregated schools in his history. Like, you can't get a more racist president right now. It's unbelievable. But all that to say, rulemaking processes, deep dive, petition initiation, and then 2, acceptance or denial of petition, request of scientific evaluation, recommendation. That's where we're at. Key considerations. Now, we know we got the letter back, and it was completely redacted, which is insane because that was a Freedom of Information request. It wasn't a classified document, and it is a real slap in the face from the current admin to the American people, and that should piss all of you off. But so from what's happened to where we're going, review and analysis from the DEA, proposed rule, key considerations, fucking public comment period, DEA final rule, and then congressional review, legal challenges, judicial review. And so all the sources are included. Thank you, Ryan Mao, for writing this. Wanted to share this because I think this is very informative. Of course, link is in the comments to go through that, folks. But with that, another one, it's an older one, but figured I would share it from mgmagazine.com because, again, this highlights what happens when we finally get cannabis moved into Schedule 3. Eliminating 280E, which will be removed with that move, could save 12 MSOs, $700 million annually combined, of course. And so you're all well aware of this if you do watch my channel regularly, but I invite you to pause to read if you don't. That being said, just bringing you down to this infamous chart that I always show because it's very important to highlight the reality of what happens once the Schedule 3 move is actually made and how it will help these MSOs that are changing the status quo in the US for the better. More here if you wanted to pause to read, otherwise full link in the comments. But with that, big news out of Ohio from counterstores.io. Thank you for sharing. As Senator Sherrod Brown puts his money where his mouth is, at least he won't pass safer for all the American people, but he will vote to legalize rec cannabis in his own state, as he probably hopes this is going to help him get reelected as well. But yeah, now do it nationally through Congress, Sherrod. Do your fucking job and pass safer so that you can help all those people that you've lied to for the last 2.5 years. But with that, so I will put that link in the comments as well, but I've got a few more out of Ohio just to highlight. November 7th, Tuesday, we're going to find out cannabis legalization would add $260 million to Ohio economy. Study predicts voters will decide on issue 2 next week. Who the fuck wouldn't want that in their right minds, unless you're a politician who's paid to believe the opposite based on your current lobbyists and the people padding your pockets? And so I invite you to pause to read if you're interested. Mind you, just wanted to share, as you know, the more resources I can provide to you, the better picture you can possibly paint from your perspective. And so with that, another one on Ohio issue 2, what is Ohio's economic impact if rec cannabis becomes legal? And so as always, this link will also be in the comments. But just wanted to share this one mostly because it touches on some company specifics. Cresco Labs, one of them, but basically we know that letting existing operators be the first groups to start providing product has worked really well in other states. Joe Check, the facilities director, told Brown. So obviously that sounds promising for Cresco and the future of their success if adult use does become the reality this Tuesday. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of time, not going to implement it or happen and be implemented on Tuesday. But anyways, you can pause to read. Otherwise, a bit more here. Full link in the comments if you're interested. But with that, another update from Florida as the Supreme Court to hear cannabis amendment arguments next week as well. This is supposed to come Wednesday, November 8th. 2024 amendment would ask voters to legalize rec pot. Now, from my understanding, I might have jumped the gun and gotten a little excited thinking that the Supreme Court is going to make a determination on this day. I apologize. I was wrong pretty clearly looking at what is supposed to happen. And so this is really just going to be the arguments. And then the main thing, though, oral arguments are set for Wednesday, November 8th in Tallahassee. Now, the thing is, I don't exactly know the timeline from now until when the Supreme Court is supposed to make a decision or ruling. But what I do remember is that if they don't make any sort of ruling before April 1st, 2024, then that means they've determined that the Attorney General is wrong and the people of Florida is right, and that this should be on the ballot. I know that is another sort of technicality. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but we're looking forward to that. So I did just want to share this as going to be a big week coming up, folks, and it's going to change a lot, hopefully, in positive ways for us. But I wanted to also share this one, a very timely random interview from Pablo Zuanic, but we love that he's sharing this on Twitter for all of us to see. Now, I will admit I did not watch the German cannabis reform video yet, but I did watch this Florida ballot initiative last night, so I've got a few clips to share with you. But just to highlight, Zuanic and Associates hosted 2 one-hour cannabis industry webinars this week. Playback links are here. And so the first clip I wanted to play from 28 minutes to highlight the first thing that this lawyer, so these are 2 lawyers, Richard Blau and Michael Minardi, based out of Florida. And then this, I believe, is a dispensary operator out of Florida as well, speaking with Pablo. But listen to what Michael Minardi has to say.
I know we are polling around 60%, but I do believe that it will pass if it gets on the ballot, especially another year out from now. I do expect cannabis on the federal level to be a Schedule 3 by the time we vote on it. And so
that means by November next year, 2024, he expects cannabis to be a Schedule 3. Just wanted to add that.
That will, I think, change a lot of the hearts and minds. And our legislature has done everything that they can to prevent and limit our medical marijuana patients' use of marijuana. So I absolutely think that they're going to be doing the same thing with legalization rolling around.
And keep in mind, this is the 3rd attempt at this in Florida, and so they've gotten feedback twice on how the wording has to be. And so, Kim, a former lawyer as well, Trulieve's invested about $40 million into this, and so obviously it's going to be big if it goes the way of the American people and Floridians, and it's also going to be bigger and more troubling if it doesn't go that way. And so just wanted to share that clip. Now there's another clip, though, at 43 or 41:30. Let me try and pull this one up. Or I'm just going to play it around here, and maybe it's going to cover what I want. Otherwise, I'll fix it and figure it out.
It goes through the review process. Not only does it go to the Secretary of State, who sends it to the Attorney General, but it also goes to a financial impact committee that is supposed to review it, and the commission's supposed to report on what the financial impact of the constitutional change would be. there's a statute that says by the 75th day of submission to that commission, if the commission hasn't rendered its report, it's deemed to be approved by the commission. But there isn't a similar statute with regard to the responsibility of the Supreme Court to make a decision on any petition that's come before it. I think as a matter of good faith, the court will take a reasonable amount of time following the oral arguments on November 8th and hopefully render a decision maybe by the end of the year or early in 2024. But that's a good faith presumption.
Right, and so similar to us thinking that 90-day deadline after HHS recommends to the DEA is something set in stone, like he says, it's almost more of a good faith presumption. And so what he's tying to here is that while the oral arguments will happen on Wednesday, and I thought we might get a decision sooner than later, he says we might, in good faith, be able to expect an announcement by the end of the year or next year, but there's really no deadline. However, I do believe it is correct that by April 1st, if there's no announcement from the Supreme Court, that means Floridians win and the AG loses. I could be wrong again. Let me know in the comments. But I will put these two links also in the comments because I actually want to watch this German cannabis one too. But hope you guys found that valuable or useful in some way. Just some comments to see how people reacted to that. But that being said, Pablo Zuanic also hosting one, I think this week, November 6th, 2 p.m. So that's tomorrow or Monday on the Pennsylvania Legalization Outlook with attorney Scott Paterno. We are Jushi and Cresco Labs as guest panelists. And so I will be tuning into that. And so thank you, Pablo, as well for posting these on Twitter and making it accessible for all of us. And so that being said, a bit more science just to highlight the reality of this miracle plant and why it ought to have been descheduled 50 years ago. From Dr. Kaplan, a promising study from University of Colorado Boulder has shed new light on cannabis use in cancer care. Roughly 40% of cancer patients in the U.S. turn to cannabis to manage pain and chemotherapy side effects. Let's dive into what this means. Now, I'm not going to play the whole video. A link will be in the comments, but I'm just going to bring you down to what he highlights 2, 3, 4, and 5 here if you wanted to, pause to read. And then 6 and 7, of course, he's selling his new book. But that being said, obviously we know cannabis is a miracle medicine. The fact that 40% of cancer patients in the U.S. is turning to it should speak volumes. And the fact that it's still in the Schedule 1 is a fucking joke, man. Like, how disrespectful. Oh, that being said, from Fox News, I just had to share this because it is so poorly written that it irks. And so out of Fox News, of course, it's fake news, but alarming new trend is emerging as younger Americans eschew alcohol on dates, go more for cannabis. How is this alarming? There's nothing alarming about this. In fact, this is a great new trend because there's likely going to be less unnecessary drunk driving accidents or just less shenanigans that happen because of alcohol when a much healthier substitute, cannabis, gets in its place. Doctors said that cannabis in some cases can lead to psychotic episodes and increase mental health issues. Fox, this looks really bad on you because the data is out and we know that cannabis doesn't actually cause psychosis. And a lot of that data is not accurate in the sense that the studies are framed to try and find harms that don't exist. And they're just bad studies that aren't in good faith. And this, shame on you, Fox. It says more about your idiocracy than the cannabis plant itself. That being said, what's really funny is most of this article just talks about why are they switching to cannabis from alcohol? Man, it's almost as if big alcohol paid for this article because it's like, in context, soberness is simply understood as a positive life choice and a healthy place from which to start a relationship. Yeah, no shit. Again, why is this causing any sort of alarm, Fox? You fucking clowns. Well, get this. Sober dating allows for people to make conscious relationship and sex decisions, which is healthier for singles who are actively dating, Sherrod. Again, what is alarming about this? The fact that young people are choosing to be sober and make better decisions for themselves and putting themselves at less risk of being taken advantage of or potentially raped on dates when, say, alcohol gets in the way and people aren't fully there, right? Many experts who spoke to folks said Gen Z is drinking less primarily because they're more aware of the harmful effects of alcohol. Yeah, they're smart. They're not fucking dumb like the news outlets that write this nonsense. More than 1/4 of Gen Z respondents said that they're very concerned about the potential health effects of drinking alcohol. Yeah, we all should be because they've been hidden or suppressed for a very, very long time. More here, of course. But then get this. You keep scrolling. They're highlighting the reality that Gen Z's not as fucking dumb as they want them to be. And then we get to the point. However, a troubling trend has emerged as alcohol use among younger generations has decreased. Therefore, there's less drunk driving accidents. Less people are dying in states where cannabis is legal. You cannot make this shit up. Full link in the comments. And with that, I mean, everyone in the right mind knows what is more harmful to a person's health, alcohol or cannabis. People aren't that dumb. And so this makes me really happy. Obviously, this was from 2022. But just to reiterate, like, shame on Fox News. It just goes to show, like, how did that prevailing narrative get so powerful? I mean, we know from years and years of propaganda without the internet to beat it, right? But like, fuck, the fact that they're still trying so hard, they really do not give a fuck about human life, because they should be celebrating the fact that less alcohol means less crime, less death, and just better everything for most people. Like, fuck. On top of that, get this from Marijuana Moment, letting people legally buy CBD significantly reduces opioid prescription rates. New study shows. Why wouldn't you want to legally regulate this so that you can have a controlled market instead of an unregulated market and then save lives in the fucking process, right? Now, I wish I could spend more time on all these articles, but the story, like the video is just going to be super long, so I don't want to take up too much time. But highlighting in general, we found that the state level legalization of CBD products only leads to a statistically significant reduction in opioid prescriptions when states also allow for open and legal dispensaries, the paper says, suggesting that adequate supply-side access is necessary to realize the potential benefits of legalization, highlighting that the status quo is all based on political science and not actual science whatsoever. And that's got to be changed, folks, right? I'm sure you can all agree. So more here if you want to pause read. Otherwise, full link is in the comments on this. But at the same time, sales of hemp-derived cannabinoids, like CBD, in legal markets, you would imagine, already or are on their way to outpace legal cannabis and are on par with craft beer, report finds. And are these results even surprising? No, highlighting that Americans want to vote for CBD or legal cannabis with their dollars if given the opportunity, and how much of a joke federal cannabis is and why it has to end. And the only ones that still believe the political science propaganda are the ones paid to, like politicians and media outlets. While research from Whitney Economics highlights that last year, CBD sales in 2022 did $28.4 billion, which is actually on par with craft beer. What are the odds? That's crazy. And so likely this year, CBD will probably outpace craft beer. It'll be interesting to see at the end of the year who ends up on top there. But also worth noting that I think the legal cannabis industry did like 29 or 30 billion last year. And so we'll see if CBD outpaces the legal industry as well. That being said, some more information here about the report from Whitney Economics. Otherwise, full link in the comments if you want to go through that. Well, again, not surprising. And again, this is old news. We already knew this. And so if you didn't know this and you're a new viewer to my channel, hey, you're welcome. You learned something new. That's a reason to give me a like. But for Marijuana Moment, home values have increased significantly more in states that legalize cannabis than those that kept criminalization. Real estate study finds. This is old news. Like, we know this. It's not surprising. But yeah, again, the reality of what happens. Study from Real Estate, Witch, and Leafly explored average home prices from 2014 to 2023, looking at the potential impact of regulated cannabis access for medical and rec purposes on real estate value. Now, I'm sure, the increased money supply also doesn't help the fact that it's forcing real estate prices to go up, let alone interest rates, making money harder to borrow and making it harder to get cheap money, hence causing the actual values to continue to go up. But also legalizing clearly does have an impact too, which is very fascinating this seems to be an interactive map. So I would recommend almost grabbing this link just to go through it. But very cool, obviously highlighting that where cannabis is legal, the prices are a lot higher. Just hence, if you own an asset like a home, it's going to be worth a lot more money and it's going to grow in value. And that is a smart thing to do, obviously, to capitalize on that when the value is high so that you can cash out at some point. And so I just wanted to share a bit more. Don't want to spend too much time on this as, again, it's old news. Full link in the comments, though, if you wanted to go through that. Well, this interesting one from Normal, an analysis as of October 26th. So I pulled it from last week, but figured I'd share it as medical cannabis most affordable in Oregon, least affordable, and you guessed it, the joke of a socialist New York state. That is sadly the case right now, but let's hope that some of those incompetent Marxists can get voted out sooner than later so we can bring American principles back and see that New York cannabis market take off. That being said, for anyone in America that is curious or uses medical cannabis and wants to know where they could possibly move to get cheaper access or just what the different prices are in different states, their analysis reported the average price for medical cannabis flower is $13.90 a gram, while in Oregon the average price is $6.91, the lowest in the nation. While other jurisdictions with lower than average prices are Maine, Colorado, Arkansas, Michigan, Ohio, Mississippi, California, New Mexico, and Arizona. And this strikes me as states that did not limit their licenses and allowed more than not to open. By contrast, New York, a gram, $23.17. Are you fucking kidding me? No wonder, because there's only, 16 or 20 legal shops and then 8,000 illicit ones that don't face any penalties or consequences for being illegal. So why would you go through the hoops of trying to open a legal one when you can run an illegal shop and have no consequences? Like, wow, social equity at its finest. And so with that, folks, I wanted to share this ad from Robert F. Kennedy. I wasn't actually going to play it, but figure, hey, let's just do it. Because while we know that him running as an independent definitely throws a curveball or a wrench into the existing status quo of the bullshit two-party illusion. But that being said, he's taking a lot of percentages. I think 22% is where he's polling as of late, taking that away from potentially the Republican and the future Dem candidate. That's going to be a big deal. And so we're going to love to watch that, but wanted to highlight he is for legalizing cannabis because he gets that it does help with addiction. And cannabis is a miracle medicine we don't know enough about because it's been stuck in the Schedule 1, of course. But if we can use this to help get people off of opioids and, off of alcohol and improve their lives, we're all for that. Well, I know he's gaining a ton of popularity. The odds of him actually winning, I don't know what they are. I just got to say, from an outsider looking in, you got to respect his integrity and the ability to articulate and say the things that everyone wants to hear that politicians don't have the balls to say. And then ultimately, it looks like he's trying to set out to finish what his uncle started. And you got to love seeing that. But I am a proponent of not taxing cannabis companies too high and at least taxing Big Pharma for a lot of the fucking harm and addiction that they caused in the past. Because to blame cannabis and the cannabis companies and to tax them essentially based on the fact that politicians made cannabis illegal and then Big Pharma and other industries lobbied to keep it illegal, you almost want to make those companies pay a fair share as well. Just thinking out loud, what do you think? But let me know in the comments.
My question to you is about marijuana.
Quarter of people in our jails in our country are people who are there for minor drug crimes, many of them for marijuana, which is now legal in many states. What I've advocated is that we should legalize marijuana. We should have a federal tax on the marijuana that is designated specifically for drug treatment and rehabilitation. And I want to build as part of my
And big alcohol, Big Pharma also pays into that tax.
presidency a series of renewal centers, of detoxification essentially centers around this country to treat the rise in mental illness and PTSD and drug addiction that is debilitating our children. We lost 106,000 kids last year to overdoses, and the opioid overdoses. That is double the number of kids that we lost during the
And what, the Sackler family gets immunity? Like, really?
20-year Vietnam War. We need to start healing our country in many ways. I think the best solution is to legalize it, make it possible for the cannabis distributors to actually bank their profits and their revenues and not force them to keep them in mattresses, which
encourages more crime. And so again, this would at least help end the discrimination. So I'm all for that. I just wanted to share that clip while there is a full write-up from Marijuana Moment, essentially reiterating a lot of his points. And so that link will be in the comments if you wanted to go through that. But next, wanted to share, for Matt Lemire's quickly, just based on like really heavy taxes and what Canada at least, why I want less taxes or lower taxes, because, well, once you become an adult and you pay taxes, you realize that less taxes is more for everybody else. All that to be said, though, Canada collected almost $1 billion in cannabis excise taxes last year. $667 million was transferred to provinces for their share of the federal levy. The feds kept $269 million. So just think about this much money just going to the government, and can we really expect this spending to be done prudently and carefully? Great call, Matt, because no, we can't, especially based on who's in charge. All that to say is that is almost why less taxing is more in the long run, because it gives governments less ability to abuse their power with money that they shouldn't necessarily have in the first place. That being said, with that from Cannabis Business Times, which U.S. senators have signed their names to the Safer Banking Act of 2023. Apparently, we got 3 new co-sponsors over the weekend, so I just wanted to share as this was updated as of November 2nd. And apparently CBT will continue to regularly update this page. And so I'll try and feature it every once in a while, but we know sadly that rescheduling to Schedule 3 is the holy grail, and if that comes first, SAFER might not be needed. But of course, we wanted SAFE to pass 2.5 years ago for all the social equity entrepreneurs and small mom and pop businesses that still can't open bank accounts, that are still robbed frequently because cash is still in the streets because they're discriminated against like no other industry in the US, right? So it's very sad, but just to highlight the original lead sponsors, original co-sponsors, and then the 3 that signed on this past week. What do you know? Bernie Sanders should have been on board a long time ago, Brian Schatz and Alex Padilla. And so we'll update you once in a while on this, but again, with rescheduling to Schedule 3, SAFER plays less of a role. It's more of a political tool. We still hope it passes. But with that, from News Talk KZRG, nearly $40 million in med cannabis tax has been sent to Missouri Veterans Commission since 2018. Huge, and I bet a lot of this has increased quickly since they launched adult use this past year, and they've been crushing it in Missouri. But so this is they recently transferred $13 million, and this is the 5th transfer to date, total of 39.4. And so this is, again, boom, what happens when you end cannabis prohibition in your state. The veterans in your state get the treatment they should have gotten fucking decades ago. And just highlights the vast difference between states that end prohibition and states that don't. The ones that end prohibition are getting light years ahead the longer that states that don't delay, right? And so more here if you wanted to read, full link in the comments below. But with that, Trulieve launches campaign to support veterans, partners, and disabled American veterans. Again, love to see more smart partnering like this. Proceeds will go to DAV to help fund veteran support initiatives nationwide. And again, when you just see the ridiculous amount of funding, of course, from probably certain nefarious sources that goes to Pride months or Pride seasons, it's insane. Yet the lack of support or funding that goes to veterans, it just makes you want to throw up, right? And so we need more of this, and love to see MSOs leading the way. As leading and top performing cannabis company in the US announced a launch of a campaign to support veterans that will run throughout November. I'm glad they're doing this because veterans only have 1 month in November. They ought to have full season 2 or more than that. But more details here if you wanted to pause to read, as the initiative is going to support veterans, and they'll be contributing $1 to a DAV donation fund for every True Salute pre-roll produced in November. So hope they're making a bunch of those and that they can, do a lot of good help for any veterans that need it in Florida, and just hope that more companies in more states might pick up on that. Well, this one from CNN, it is about Green Thumb, so I figured I would just share this in this section of Cannabis MSOs. But Magnolia Bakery, I don't know anything about them, probably because I'm not American, but their famous banana pudding is being whipped up in a new version that triggers elation in a different kind of way. And so I'll admit I did not read through this whole article, just one that I pulled up and wanted to add as I found it this morning, but it seems like, are they going to be my question is, are they partnering with Green Thumb? And you'd think that they might be just based on the image that they use. Yeah, okay, so Magnolia worked with Green Thumb Industries, which produces incredible edibles to make the branded bars. Cool, awesome. And so, hey, great job on Green Thumb by getting into probably a well-known delicacy brand in the U.S. And so you can pause to read this section if you want. But good on Green Thumb for doing that and getting into some new markets and getting some new awareness, especially positive awareness on CNN. Fuck yeah. Well, some earnings reports to relay. Cresco Labs to report third quarter 2023 financial results on November 15th, 2023. And this will be before the market opens. While we've got this one from Air, as they plan to hold their third quarter 2023 conference call on November 16th, the next day before the market opens as well. So we'll be looking forward to that, which, holy shit, earnings should start this week coming up. We'll have Ohio on the 7th, Florida oral arguments begin on the 8th, and then on the 8th, I'm pretty sure there's Green Thumb, Trulieve, Verano, some of them on there. So shit, next week, folks, we got a big week coming up. Didn't even realize it almost. With that, Air announces one agreement with senior note holders to extend maturity date by 2 years. And so from my understanding, this pushes their debt further into the future, requires them to pay less sooner than later, which will give them time to, generate more profits and allow them to pay off their debt. Well, number 2, commitment for US $50 million of new money financing. Not ideal to see, as that will dilute the current share count by 30%. But one of the main reasons I've been building my new position in Air, besides the fact they're so undervalued based on the growth they're going to see in the future, is that they have the lowest share count or share float out of all the MSOs. And while it does suck to see them diluted, from my understanding, once the flip switches, technicals, fundamentals, much like they haven't mattered any recently, they're not going to matter then. And once the institutional money flows in, one of the things I think they might be looking for is obviously future potential for the companies, but which ones have the lowest share count so that their money flowing in is going to have the biggest impact. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments what you think. But that's why I'm not too concerned, just because out of all the MSOs, their float's the smallest. And even with this, I think that their float is still going to remain the smallest of outstanding shares. So I'm fine with that. But let me know what you think if you're an Air Wellness shareholder and you disagree in the comments, please. Well, number 3, amendment to Live Free Wellness LLC promissory notes. And so overall, I think the most important thing is pushing the debt into the future so that Air Wellness has time, again, to make gross profit, have 280E removed, be able to keep more and pay that debt off and stay a healthy company that's afloat. All that to say is, if you are interested, grab the full link in the comments. If you're an Air Wellness shareholder, you might want to read through it a bit more. But again, don't want to make this video too long, as we've got a lot more stories to get through. Thank you, Jesse Redmond, for sharing this one. Investment snippets based on markets or other information we've got recently. Maryland is the story as we head into Q3 earnings next week. Sales are up 125% quarter over quarter, with almost equal increases in prices and unit volumes. So good point there, Jesse. We're looking out for that. TerrAscend recently raised guidance, and Ascend Wellness pre-announced strong Q3 results. What do they have in common? 4 stores in Maryland. Smaller operators like MariMed, a client that have 1 store in cultivation, will also feel the bump. Below our MSO stores in Maryland. So just a reminder, I'm also working on the cultivation size for each operator, and my early read is Green Thumb, TerraSend, Goodness Growth, and MariMed are the leaders. If you have thoughts or data on the wholesale market, please drop a comment below. But just to highlight again, MSOs with operating dispensaries in Maryland that should benefit in Q3 from earnings based on that market turning on. I think it was July 1st. So we're going to love to see what happens there. While CannASource.io sharing New Mexico cannabis sales up to October 2023. And so just highlighting the newest trend, sales continue up. Another record month, it looks like, while medical continues to go down because cannabis itself, the plant, is the medicine. There's no difference between medical cannabis and rec cannabis. The plant itself is a medicine, hence why less people need to go to a doctor and go through the hoops of getting the prescriptions filled when they can go to the dispensary and buy their medicine just like that. You love to see it. And it seems like there's more data here. Average sale per transaction as well. Average sales trend per transaction, or sale price per transaction, just so you know. On to the next one from Mark Gallo. Monumental day for cannabis, as Cantrip Guy points out, and he's the CEO of Cantrip Drinks. Seems like he's an entrepreneur that is very big on the beverage scene, but worth noting that beverages are on shelf at Total Wine for the first time in Minnesota. And while we know Minnesota is not going to have a legal adult use market until I think 2026 because they decided to wait on the commercial side, there was that loophole that allowed, for some reason, THC-infused drinks to be a thing. And the fact that they are top shelf, or not top shelf, but front and center shelf like this at a Total Wine. Again, I'm not American, so I don't know Total Wine very well, but this seems like a big fucking deal. And so just wanted to share. I'm not sure about the comments on this, but yeah, love to see this. Hopefully this is in more Total Wines, but I think this is a big precedent, and this should be gaining some attention as well. So figured I'd share that. Well, from Weed Street 420, the biggest bear. Well, this is surprising. U.S. cannabis prices keep rising despite Croptober, up another 4.7% this week. We love to see it as of November 3rd, 2023. All we can hope is that the prices keep going up, which will make cannabis more valuable, which will, again, signal that we've likely hit the bottom and we're heading up into the next bull cycle that we've been fucking waiting for a very long time. As U.S. cannabis spot index increased 4.7% to $1,112 per pound as of November 3rd. While this one from Jesse Redmond again today compared institutional ownership of 5 large alcohol and tobacco companies to the top 5 MSOs. It's striking the difference. The alcohol and tobacco beverage basket's average institutional ownership size is 75.23%, which is consistent with what we see in mature sectors. Meanwhile, Curaleaf, Green Thumb, Verano, Trulieve, and Cresco Labs have an average institutional ownership of just 9.59%. And so I'm not a big math whiz, but if this were to increase from 9.59% to 75.23%, what would that do to the share price? Let me know in the comments if you know the answer to that. And so it will take a combination of improved fundamentals, federal reform, and uplisting to higher exchanges. Great podcast. Shameless plug, and I did feature that later here too, which you'll have access to, link in the comments, to attract institutions. But at these prices, hopefully as these pieces, no, I thought that was a typo, but it's not. But as these pieces hopefully fall into place, increasing institutional ownership remains a key component of the long-term cannabis investing thesis. And it is a good point that these institutions can't invest in cannabis because of the red tape, because it's still stuck in the Schedule 1, right? Will moving it to Schedule 3 potentially resolve that and allow for uplisting? We all hope, but unfortunately it's not in our control. As much as we want it to be, it's not. Anyways, next one from CY Scott, who I believe works for Headset.io. And this is a very interesting share. This is seriously one of the cooler things we've done at Headset.io. Let me just click this open quickly just to give you an idea. And then you can grab the link in the comments if you want to go through. But the Brand Explorer, so you can choose the category, the market, and the trend. But I think the main thing overall is just to highlight for any of you guys watching the top growing brands in the US. Stizzy's number 1, 6-month growth, $25 million over that period of time. Wild, 6-month growth, $25 million. Jeter, $25 million, 6-month growth. General Admission, $10+ million, 6-month growth. Kiva, $10+ million, 6-month growth. High Supply, which is Cresco's brand. I love to see that they are among one of these higher performing brands. Good Supply, which is actually Tilray's in Canada. Good to see them doing well, as this was one of the discount brands, but it seems like, mind you, they bought Hexo, they bought all these other competitors too. And so I guess they're just probably putting all that bud into the Good Supply brand. Probably helps them. Spinach, another one. Ozone, Wana, Back 40. And so anyways, full link in the comments, but just wanted to give you an idea. So let me know if you guys recognize any of those brands and whether you're surprised or not based on what you see in your markets. Well, got a few more that we've got to load up. Oh yeah, this is Florida, I believe. Yes, OMMU weekly update, October 27th, November 20 or to November 2nd. I will put the original Florida OMMU document in the comments as I usually do. But with that, Florida market share this past week, THC market share this past week, and CBD market share. Well, the good news is the qualified patient count did increase to 855,267. And while that growth is slowing down, I do apologize. I did not end up looking up the numbers from last week yet, but I will put that information in the comments when I update that after I post all this. Well, these new dispensaries were opened, so we do love to see Move by Verano, again, putting their head down and focusing on what they can control, opening new dispensaries in new markets, much like Trulieve did in Sanford. And so the visuals, for anyone that's interested, total flower sales in ounces by company, total THC sales in milligrams by company, total CBD sales in milligrams by company, and total dispensing locations by company. With that, on to Chris Norman Law. Oh yes, our favorite source out of New Jersey. A little bit of perspective on how early we are, as in New Jersey, there are only 61 cannabis dispensaries thus far, and the New Jersey Regulatory Commission is slowly but surely realizing they need a lot more because it's going to be more beneficial and drive a lot more business, more jobs, more tax revenue. But there are 1,122 liquor stores in New Jersey. So there's a lot of room for cannabis stores to catch up, right? Just wanted to reiterate, we're still early, folks. Do not lose hope. And so with that, for Marijuana Moment, Connecticut officials doubled the state's cannabis purchase limit for adults. Yes, love to see this, as you imagine that they heard feedback that people wanted the limits increased. And so Connecticut citizens will be able to buy up to half an ounce of cannabis in a single retail transaction, double the state's current purchase limit of a quarter ounce. Thank God that they're allowing you to buy half an ounce as opposed to just a quarter ounce now. But limits on medical cannabis purchases currently set at 5 ounces per month will remain unchanged. And so, hey, big win. Now you can buy 14 grams as opposed to 7 if you're in Connecticut. So you can pause to read otherwise more in the comments below. We've got this one from Marijuana Moment. As Colorado should be at the center of global cannabis market, Governor says as he unveils new cannabis budget proposals. And that's very wishful thinking, but I do love to see it out of Colorado. And while Polis wasn't the governor, I don't believe, when they legalized, whoever was, thank you for allowing that to happen so that Colorado could be, the blueprint for everyone else. But all that to point out is that Polis says he's proposing new cannabis tax revenue distributions at the state level to further promote equity and streamline licensing because he pushes for federal reform. All right, well, highlighting new ways he's asking the legislature to appropriate millions of dollars in cannabis tax dollars for workforce development, licensing, and industry investment in lower income areas. This sounds better than using that Marxist term equity. If you've learned anything from watching my channel, when a politician uses this term, you want to question them. Hey, what do you mean by that? Okay, and what do you mean by that? In what context? Because it often doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean. But so more details here if you wanted to pause to read. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on every article. Pause to read this bit here if you'd like, and then I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Otherwise, full link is in the comments if you want to go through that. While this one from Brad Racino. Oh yeah, New York update. Get this one. Oh wait, what? Now this was from a Senate meeting or hearing that had happened this week. But yeah, essentially get this. A third of Chicago Atlantic's committed funding will help DASNY lease spaces from building owners and sublease them to cannabis dispensaries, while the remaining 100 mil will be used to acquire real estate directly. So this Chicago Atlantic, who's funding their social equity program, is going to use 100 mil to buy real estate and then pad their own investments by releasing those out at higher rates. This is extortion. Like, how are they admitting that they're going to be extorting the people of New York and the social equity applicants that they're trying to help? You cannot make this shit up. And corruption, I love the comments because it's such a fucking joke. Wild. And all you can really do is laugh until this shit show resolves itself by getting rid of those incompetent Marxists that sadly got voted into power. But with that, MJ Biz Daily, Missouri regulators lift recall on nearly 15,000 cannabis products. And so a recall highlights that a legal market is working because regulators are doing their job and finding products that might not have been safety tested and recalling them. But the good news is, apparently, the Department of Health and Senior Services have released the nearly 15,000 products that were under recall according to an October 20th notice. The infused products contain distillate manufactured by this company and its affiliates. The agency warned license holders that the remaining products must be quarantined until the investigation is complete. But the investigation apparently was completed, and maybe it was a scare, so they're releasing it back from my understanding. And so, hey, just highlighting that the legal industry in Missouri is working. Thank you, MJ Biz Daily, for that update. Well, this one from Marijuana Moment, as Wisconsin, one of the a small island in a small island in an area of many states that have legalized, yet to still do it. While the governor is calling for it, it seems the lawmakers are the ones getting in the way. But update for you all, Wisconsin could see nearly $170 million annually in cannabis revenue under top Democratic senators' legalization bill. Yeah, no shit. So hopefully lawmakers are making progress as opposed to stalling like they have been. But this is from a new state analysis estimate, if you're interested. And so that's the gist of it. More down here if you wanted to pause to read. And then I'll bring you down a little further if you wanted to pause to read. Excuse me, otherwise full link is in the comments. But with that, even out of Mississippi, right? They're getting more educated than you on the realities of this cannabis plant, depending where you are in the states, of course. But love to share this out of November 2nd, or as of November 2nd, Ole Miss unveils trailblazing masters in medical cannabis and supplement research. And so they're introducing new master's degrees and courses and programs in medical cannabis research by the end of 2024. Obviously, it takes time to implement, but the initiative, unique to its online delivery, will be administered through the School of Pharmacy and aids to nurture expertise in developing medical cannabis products and dietary supplements, because Lord knows we need it. Sectors witnessing burgeoning consumers bases both in Mississippi and nationwide. Also just highlighting that existing doctors know nothing about human biology. All they know is to try and find symptoms and to give you something to mask that symptom as opposed to solving the underlying issue, right? So we need more doctors trained on how you can also use cannabis and not just drug pill pushers, essentially. It's the sad reality. While we got this one from Bloomberg, oh yeah, I forgot about this completely, but get this story. Canada hedge funds trades halted after losses and manager's death. So obviously it's tragic. No one should want to take their lives based on bad decisions, but it happens. So the sudden death of a Toronto-based hedge fund manager has prompted an investigation into tens of millions of dollars in losses that the funds appear to have run up. This is hella suspicious though, right? I mean, the fact that the hedge fund manager's death isn't being called suspicious is hella suspicious, but I found this from Yahoo Finance. So get this, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take you up to the top first. As Canada hedge fund trades halted after losses, manager's death. Excuse me. But I wanted to bring you down. You know what? This literally just copy and pasted from Bloomberg. So I'm pretty sure this is actually the article because that's literally what I just read. So it's kind of crazy that Bloomberg and Yahoo Finance are sharing the same thing, yet one of them is behind a paywall. Don't pay for any news, man. You just got to use Twitter and do the digging yourself. Anyways, all that to point out why I needed to bring this one up and show you is because they specify Trainer Ridge started off investing in special purpose acquisition companies according to a person familiar with the fund's activity. The hedge fund then began trading convertible securities, preferred shares, and cannabis stocks, including Trulieve Holdings, Cresco Labs, and Cannabis Company Holdings, said the people who asked not to be identified due to the sensitivity of the matter. Shares of Trulieve and Cresco tumbled, as did Cannabis. Now, whether it's related or not, I mean, I didn't pull up shortdata.ca, but I'm pretty sure even in my last week's video, you can pull that up, or you can go to shortdata.ca.com, go to largest short positions, choose the Canadian Securities Exchange, and you can check that for yourself. And so, all that to point out, I wanted to share this because, hell, this does highlight that there's been some fucking shenanigans going on in the Canadian market. And, well, now someone owes someone a lot of money. And I don't know if this has to do with shorting or anything or naked shorting. Who knows, right? But had to share that. And so also related to that is this from Betting Bruiser as he shared this on November 2nd. Letting this be a warning to all those who hold water or deep short, I think, and do dirty deeds at the behest of Anson Funds and Moaz Kassam, who we've seen under investigation from the SEC before. Their former lawyers Blake Castles and Graydon are being sued for $220 million for breaching its solicitor-client privilege, all related back to his lawsuit, I believe, against Anson Funds that he filed to the SEC. And so all that to say, hey, thank you, Betting Bruiser, for sharing this. Obviously, he knows more about this than I do, and I'm just sharing what I know and what I can piece together. But if anyone that was manipulating these stocks because they could, and if they can be held accountable, I'm sure we all want that. And it seems like there is stuff going on behind the scenes that might see some people held accountable down the line. We'd love that for that to be the case. So a bit more information down here if you wanted to pause to read. A bit more down here if you wanted to pause to read. I will admit I haven't even scrolled down this far yet, so I'm just sharing what's available there. And while I do say still take this with a grain of salt, Betting Bruiser has been somewhat credible in the past sharing some of this. So I would say it's more likely true than not. It just does require a lot more digging, which I haven't done. So if you have, let me know in the comments if you know more about this as well. And maybe this in relation to this, although I don't know if they are related. I'm not trying to, make them related. But last few stories as we head out, rounding off out of Japan, High Times sharing that the Japanese hemp cultivators are working to revitalize their hemp industry, which, hey, yes, we'd love to see that out of Japan, where we wouldn't expect it because they're not very cannabis friendly. There aren't many hemp cultivators left in Japan, but those who remain are developing new products to boost interest and prevent the industry from disappearing. Think about the size of the makeup industry in Japan and South Korea and East Asian countries. And if we get CBD in there, yeah, baby, you know where I'm going with this. And so again, not going to spend too much time on this, but invite you to pause to read if you're interested, and just seeing how other countries are waking up to the reality of, holy shit, hemp is a sustainable plastic alternative. Yeah, we might as well be using this. Oh, CBD, very effective. Medicinal properties. We might as well be using this. Next thing you know, Japan might be allowing THC. Fingers crossed. That's obviously wishful thinking. But last few stories, folks, is really just resources that I'm going to share that you can tune into if you're interested. First one, MBA Stock Trader, and I will admit I've not listened to any of these this past week. I wish I had the time, but it was a busy work week. That being said, as of October 31st, update on safer banking with Don Murphy from MJ Stock Trader. 28 minutes, so not that long, but link will be in the comments if you want to play that recording. Again, I haven't listened to this. I don't know much about what Safer's fate is like going forward based on everything now, but obviously Don will have a better perspective than I do. After that one, we've got Jesse Redmond and their Higher Exchanges podcast. Well, that's not what I wanted to click on, but here we go. The Higher Exchanges podcast, an hour and 20 minutes long. This was recorded as of November 2nd, and I believe this involves him, Toby Cannabis, and Morgan Paxia of that old failed Poseidon ETF, unfortunately. As always, folks, this link will be in the comments, and just to reiterate that point I made earlier, Jake Perry, great comment. How much faith is there on the panel for the 90-day time window for DEA response? No one knows, and I tried to reiterate, while we've seen that from different government documents, does it even apply if the current administration holds no one that fucks up accountable or that doesn't do their job accountable, right? Wishful thinking to think that there might be a deadline, but again, it's really better to just plan accordingly for a situation and trust that we don't know. Just know that it's going to happen when it happens. But with that, the Dales Report and Dan Ahrens talks latest industry performance. This is the full interview from that clip earlier shared in the beginning. And so again, I haven't listened to this, but full link is in the comments if you're interested. While we got this one from the chart guys, I saw this one this morning. I have not watched it yet either. So again, take anything I'm sharing with a grain of salt, more or less just they've been credible voices in the cannabis space for a while, hence why I'm sharing them. But I do appreciate Dan's technical analysis videos. And so he goes through cannabis and psych stock charts. And so it's a 14-minute video, not too long. Otherwise, full link in the comments if you're interested in going through that. While last one to highlight before we head off, another one of these ridiculous articles projecting the future growth of the cannabis industry if federal prohibition, say, ended and, you know, the market flourished by 2032. Honestly, it could be a lot bigger if globally every country recognized cannabis as medical benefits. And, you know, it might be wishful thinking to think we'll get to this point by 2032. But all that to point out, take any article like this, as always, with a grain of salt. But according to recent study by Spherical Insights and Consulting, whoever the fuck they are, probably paid to be featured in this, and this is likely an advertorial for them, right? I haven't even gone through it, but just figured I would share it. Yep, it is, and the report is there. So again, just wanted to share, though, because it is comical, although it does highlight the reality that once we end prohibition and unlock the medicinal properties of this plant, it is true that it's going to be massive and global. But according to them, the market is set to expand at a compound annual growth rate of 22.2% over the next decade. Do you believe them? Let me know in the comments. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody. Take care till next time.